Very good afternoon to you and welcome to this special coverage of Linden in Crisis. My name is Andrew Weeks, the Public Relations Officer for the AFC. As you're seeing on your screen right now, Linden, parts of Linden in the sawmill area on fire. We are having this situation happening right now as we speak. The sawmill is fire spreading and it seems like there's no end in sight. We're also going to be bringing to you updates on what's happening with the protests. The two dead Lindeners who were shot by police. Still, investigation still on its way. We have not gotten any update that you and I would have known before, but we should get something from our two guests that we have on the show. But you could remember what's happening on the bridge, the Wisma Bridge, a couple of days ago, where because of the shooting of these two gentlemen got out of hand. The Lindeners took to the streets to call for justice. And so we're going to give you an update on what's happening there. We have our guest on the line in the green room, Deavin Sears, Member of Parliament, and we have Vice Chairman of the Linden Region 10, Mark Goring, on standby. They're there, and they're going to give us all the updates that we need, so that you, the viewer, you, the listener, can get first-hand information as to what's happening on the ground. As you know, Mark Goring, the Vice Chairman, was on the ground this morning with our colleague Sherrod Duncan, and he brought some updates before, early in the morning. We're going to get some more updates from him now. And so welcome, spread the word, spread the link, share the feed, and ensure that you spread the link to all your contacts so you can get updates of what's happening in Linden. And so first up, Mark Goring, Regional Vice Chairman. He was the man on the ground. He was bringing us, with our colleague Sherrod Duncan, what's happening on the ground. And so, Vice Chairman, good afternoon. So sorry to bring you in at such a crucial time as this, but as you know, we have to get the work done. We have to inform and educate sensible viewers, those who would reason things out for themselves, and those who would, understand what's happening in front of them and behind them. Okay? And so, Mark, thanks for joining this feed. Thanks for coming on the air. You were on the ground early this morning. You have lost a lot of sleep, but you have to do this because that is what you are elected to do. You took an oath to represent the people, and you are on the ground. You were on the ground. You're still on the ground. You're bringing us updates. Give the viewers right now a sense of what's happening on the side of the sawmill that has caught on fire and spreading. Give us an update of what you have observed, what you have seen, what you have gotten so far on the ground.
Hi, Andrew. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to the viewers. Thank you for having me. And if you notice the live update, you will see I'm still wearing the same clothes. So you actually pulled me out from the fields. I mean, I didn't want to do the interview in the field so that the wind and so can affect the sounding. First off, let me say there are a number of things that is occurring in Linden, Region 10. And though I'm going to bring you live updates about what's going on, I also don't want to scare nobody out from Linden. Linden is still the beautiful place, still that place you want to be from the 26th to the 5th of May, when we will celebrate the Tongues anniversary, where we will celebrate Linden Tongue Week, and everybody's preparing. All the activities is still there. I don't believe nothing has been postponed as yet, so I must say that off the bat. We know we had some concern about the road, the highway that is currently under construction. I want to say I ventured down the highway yesterday, and it's far better from when I last reported about the condition. So we would have raised those concerns. We would have concern with the contractors on the ground, and we had a dialogue. Also, the minister would have reached out to them, and so they would have able to keep the road, the surface a little bit smoother to make it passable for commuters. So that is, you know, rectify somewhat. It wouldn't be total comfort, but at the same time, we want to ask our residents that is traversing the highway, visitors that is coming in to be cautious. It's a construction zone. We want you to understand that workers are there. And I could tell you just last week, Saturday morning, I was going to town and a visitor was actually coming in to Linden,
Mm.
and so the guy was directing traffic, and that was a catastrophe. I mean, by the grace of God, the guy that was directing traffic, he didn't see what happened because he gave me the sign to stop, and I stopped, and the traffic behind him, but he was facing me. And the car that was coming behind him, the guy actually dropped asleep
Wow.
and veer off the road. And he didn't even see. In fact, it's still when he saw I go to the car to render assistance, then
Mm.
he realized that he almost died if the
Wow.
car did not veer. So when I go over and I, make sure that the guy is all right, the guy saying, he dropped asleep. So I don't know if it's by the highway, you have to take so much precaution, drive slow or whatever, but he dropped asleep and could have taken out the guy that, directing traffic. So I say all of that to say, I want person to traverse in the highway to also take into account that we have workers there that is directing traffic, that is trying to maintain um, road safety, try to maintain order. And so I want you to follow those protocols because we don't want to, and some of those employees is from Linden, resident of Linden, some from the highway, some from Suzdike, wherever.
Mm.
At the end of the day, we want person to be safe. So when traversing the highway is a construction zone,
Mm.
please follow all the road signs, follow the guidelines that is there for you to follow the person who is giving instruction, because simply that guy could have killed the guy that actually given the instruction to say slow, stop, or go. Right?
Mm.
The human stop sign, he almost take out. And so I rent assistant, and the guy was all right. His car was damaged. We call out to the safety officer who would have came and get his car out from the ditch and so on, but it could have been worse. So I just want to emphasize that please be safe on the highway. You might see they give it a little smooth in where you are complaining, just continue going at that same 40 kilometer, 30 kilometer, whatever is being prescribed. Please follow those guidelines so that you can be safe, and also the workers can be safe, and your opposing traffic, your oncoming traffic can be safe. I just want to make that clear, and so person can be safe. Now coming into Region 10, just as you enter into Linden, we have that situation there with the sawmills and the dump site in which caught fire almost 72 hours now. That would have started from years of dumping debris into that ditch,
Mm.
sawdust and wood, and that would have created its own, what I should say, sawdust in itself, when you compact it, it creates its own gas, methane and all these different gas. And so that's like a fuel in that basin there,
Mm.
right? And no one can say who started the fire, but based on one sawmiller I would have spoke to yesterday, he would say normally they would just see steam and smoke start coming out from that area, way down into the ditch. So the fire started in the ditch. So I want to believe this fire would have started naturally with gas, and so that would have built up over the years within that area. So there's no finger pointing. Otherwise, somebody had to actually light a fire and shine tail down into the gully, which is about 300 feet depth. Right. So that fire would have started on its own, and was there burning until the evening when it started threatening the sawmill. Well, then we had to get emergency response by the fire station. I can say as of yesterday, um, we had a number of personnel, and I must say kudos to the personnel that actually, or the companies that responded. China Railway, that is currently constructing the Wismar Mackenzie Bridge. I
Mm.
would have spoke to them. They come on the ground, they assess the situation, and they commit to bringing out their water tank.
Mm.
Um, They had reinforcement from Georgetown. The fire chief was here. They would have given or brought additional fire tenders from Georgetown to add to the fleet that is in Linden. The road company, Namalco, who is part of the contractor who is currently constructing the highway, they also would have responded with two of their own water truck. Other private, I think, is C. Marbeer. They would have responded. I think they have the biggest water truck. They would have responded with their water truck to the fire. So in all, we had over 10 firefighting equipment there yesterday, trying to contain the fire. And one of the method that we devise is to dig trench around the sawmill and start flooding the trench so that the fire may not come across to damage property, whereby putting person out of a job and damaging other equipment and so that is in the area. I would have done an assessment just on that two sawmill alone. At least about 35% would have been out of a job or so. And so it was important to actually protect those property. Going into the evening, that was a containment plan. And then into throughout the night, one of the main thing that I observed before I left is that the fire was spreading with the wind. And this morning, myself and Sharon, we did an interview there, but then we went down into the pit, right? We went into the pit. We went around where persons living, and then we get an understanding of how close the housing how close housing person
This entire
persons actually
valley that is
residing.
here, it's surrounded by 7 to about
Mhm.
8 or 9
Yeah,
I'm here
I saw.
myself. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, where persons being residing is not that far. It's like 150 feet. And when we get down into the gully, is apparently 30 to 40 to 50 feet where the fire is from a farm. So the people that is living there, they're actually farming also in that gully. So their farm is under threat. In fact, the water is currently hot. When the guy went down into the creek that he normally used to wash his hand, he had to pull it out fast because the water there is almost boiling
Wow.
because that area is a watershed, right? So water is currently being streamed from that area that is on fire. So I'm thinking, or is my assessment that that water may dried up, seeing that that entire area and vegetation start burning, right? So it is not that far from the top. It look like far, but when you get down into the bottom, when you get down and you actually face up with the fire where the fire is coming,
Hmm.
right? Resident is actually in the line of fire, and so we hoping and we monitoring that area to make sure that the fire is not moving as fast, and try to make sure that it contain right within that area. Of course, we're doing assessment on the area there. Person throughout the night, resident would have complained of the smoke that
Yeah.
affected them throughout the night. So those 5 or 6 houses that is directly in the line of fire, they have a constant flow of smoke passing through their house, and it's affecting
Mhm.
them, affecting the children, and so onward. So that is one of my concerns. In the last night, I would have used my social media platform to advise residents that if it threaten, to call the fire station. And I believe it started threatening one resident last night who is directly um, close to the sawmill, the immediate neighbor of the sawmill. The fire started coming up behind that elderly woman house. And so the fire will have to return and make sure that they put out and they work well into the morning till 3 o'clock this morning. And then thankfully, we had the act of God in which nature take its course by the flow of rainfall, which actually helped the situation um, really helped the situation this morning, right? By wetting the vegetation and
Mr.
so.
Vice Chair, before you continue, um, I know that when there's an emergency, you have all those mechanisms will be activated. You have the fire, you have the ambulance, you have the medical corps, the medical team. Everybody will be activated. I heard you saying that close by, some of those residents there might be affected by the smoke. How is that being dealt with medically? Do you have medical team on the
All right.
ground giving assistance, and so on and so forth? What's happening there?
All right. So the medical team is not yet on the ground. Just before I came on the live, I would have met with Dr. Harris. And so we had a conversation. So the medical team will come into play. Of course, everybody, we have a disaster preparedness committee that is in play, that is manned by the chairman. We coordinate with several agencies. And just before I came here, I was actually coordinating with the Guyana Forestry Commission, in which we asked the sawmills to halt operation temporarily so that we can actually coordinate and fight this fire and make sure that we contain this fire. And in doing so, while doing so, another building for one of the sawmill actually caught fire. Just now, it
Mm.
right now is on fire. So I would have been able to call and coordinate with Linden Electricity Corporation. Sorry, I think LEI. Um, yeah, I was able to call and coordinate with them to go and cut off. So, person in the Mills Ward, if you notice that your light went, we had to take off the light so that we can, because that building that just caught fire is close to a transformer. So we work with everybody, the light company, CDC, forestry, everybody that is involved, all stakeholder, all right, the local authority and everything, everyone that is related to this fire we're working with so that we can contain this blaze and also to make sure that no more property is being destroyed, right? I want to believe some one of those property that you're currently seeing there would have caught fire just now. That is on your screen. Yeah, one of those property I think caught fire just now. If I don't lie, it's that same one that you actually see in there that is to the back caught fire. And so the fire wheel is currently putting out that is currently, when we do another drone shot, we'll know exactly if it's that one. But I believe that same one there caught fire. And if you see how close it is to the fire, and so that building went up in flames. The photograph, the videos just came to my phone. I had to leave there immediately to come and do this live with you. So we're monitoring that situation there. Of course, we're talking with all, we are also trying to organize a meeting with all the relevant agency and stakeholders so that we can, in the aftermath of this, we can put proper system in place, proper waste disposal system can be, site can be identified and all these different things. So we're going to meet with forestry, the heads of forestry, EPA, and so on, another agency that have experience in firefighting, of course, the Guyana Fire Service, police, and all agency that is involved. We're going to meet with them. We're going to organize that meeting so that we can put better system in place to work with. Of course, we work in a system that is broken, right? And we have to work with those constraints, but nevertheless, we'll continue to work with whatever resource we have. And this call into question, right, about buying or procuring modern firefighting equipment, because in this case, we'll see that right away, we doesn't have the capability to out that fire because we doesn't have aerial support to out fire that we see in those developed countries when they have forest fires and so. So right away, we'll have to, take those things into consideration moving forward. But of course, for now, we have to work with what we have, and that is what we work with on the ground, coordinating a collective coordinated effort. Of course, the fire chief was up here yesterday. I had a conversation with him, and he would have indicated the plan, would have instructed his guys on the ground in what they should do and how they should tackle this fire. I just received an update there from the Guyana Forestry Commission that currently 8 sawmill is being affected by this fire. And so we would
Eight
ask those
sawmills.
8 sawmills. So we would ask those 8 sawmills. The officers are currently on the ground, and we will ask them to temporarily halt their operation so that we can collectively fight and contain this fire, and to make sure that no more property is being destroyed, and to also look at the efforts to, the yeah. So as I speak to you, I'm getting live update from Guyana Forestry Commission. They also is on the ground, so they're feeding me live update. We have a coordinated effort currently being worked. I was set thanks to Mr. Tashrif Khan, who I've been communicating with, and his officers on the ground, Green and his team on the ground there, coordinating efforts. Right, the firemen and those guys. They have some guys from Georgetown who came up here for the last 48 hours, been working tirelessly with us, with our counterparts in Linden, LeBron and those guys, and the divisional commander in the area, working together to make sure that they counter this. And I must say special thanks also to China Railway and both sides, because we were having a hard time refilling the truck. But both sides have a system that tend to refill truck at a fast rate. And
Mm.
the chairman would have reached out to both sides and they would have make their facilities available so that we have a faster turnaround because we were having problem every time the truck go to refill. They were taking like 25 minutes to refill the truck, and then to go and come is approximately about an hour the trucks were taking to actually go and refill and come back. But
Oh.
thanks to both sides, we were able to now go refill within a 5 minutes period and return quickly so the truck will have a constant flow of water that we can actually keep the blaze under containment. So it's a
So,
collective effort we're currently working with.
so would you say now that this blaze will get under control before the end of the day? Would you say that?
No. Currently, there's the fire that is there because we don't have that aerial support to control. What we might able to control is the perimeter.
Mm.
Right? There was trenches that was dug, and you keep flooding them to make sure that that it's moist, that it's not dry, so that the fire can skip over. We had to dig down like 15 feet in depth to get the actual soil because that is that amount of debris built up over the years. And so 15 feet down to the soil to make sure that the fire doesn't cross over and create that separation in the debris, in the sawdust and the wood material, the wood waste, right? And so that will help for now. So we have to contain and currently monitoring the edge of the forested area to make sure that the fire doesn't cross over. Because as I said before, from the top, it is looking like about 400 feet, which I was actually reporting yesterday from the distance of the residence. And this is the last sawmill. But when you go down to the bottom, when you go around to the back, because it is a basin, when you go around, it is closer than I thought. Is it 200 or less feet? The houses are right there, and the farm is like 50 feet from the blaze. So just now, the farm, if the blaze continue to move at a faster rate, that farm might catch fire. But I'm hoping that we constantly get the drizzle and so on, and so that it would not caught the guy farm.
Mhm.
He's planting dasheen and pine, banana, plantain, and so we know that is food
have
to
been
supply the
accumulating
family,
over
and we don't want that to happen. So we'll monitor that situation. Of course, I will have to go back on the ground and get the medical team to go and assess what this how the smoke is actually affecting me. Because I'm not a medical personnel. I can only observe and ask question, and it being relayed to me that the smoke would have affected them throughout the night, and so we want to make sure that medical team is on the ground to have a response and make sure that person don't suffocate from smoke inhalation and those different things that they can actually affected by this fire. So we will continue to work there in that aspect and continue to collaborate with all the different agency so that we can even notice that is the trench that we had actually that the fire service actually dug yesterday. Not the fire service, the private contractor actually dug yesterday to make sure that they create a separation between the fire and the area where the sawmill actually is.
So what
So
you need
that
now is
that
more.
will work
So
at the
what you
moment.
need
But this
now,
fire will burn
yeah.
for a couple of days.
So what you need now is more water, plenty water.
Yeah, water, there constant water to flood that trench. That trench got to be constantly flooding because any 20 minutes an hour, the trench dried up and it feel like water never touch it. They
Mm.
are constantly flooded. Of course, I believe one of the mill was under threat. Those guys would have dismount the mill and move it from that area. There's an area going to the right of the screen there. They would have dismount the mill and move it from there so that it don't catch fire. Of course, the molder cannot be moved, so they have to constantly wet the area around the molder, and the shed that is currently housing it have to constantly be dosed with water so that you keep it moist and don't get dry, and a piece of particle can easily go and caught it fire, right? Because important piece of equipment that normally make molding and lappage and V-joint and all these different profile wood. And so we
Mm.
want to make sure that property, because a lot of family depends on that simple piece of machinery, because there's a sawmill site and they have at least between 15 to 25 workers I average. And
Mm.
so we want to make sure after this fire is contained, that person still able to have a job that they can feed their family. Right. So currently, if you hold the video right there, if you hold the video right there, myself and Sharon, we were at the bottom of this video, right? At the bottom of that gully right there. And so when you go from the bottom there, it's like that's about 20 to 50 feet. The fire is from the farm. And there's a water stream right at the bottom there. The water stream currently is boiling because that entire area is under fire, and so the water is pretty much hot. And this does don't affect the person that is right there. This also affect person downstream, right? We have a lot of person who utilizing this water, some for drinking purpose, some for watering their garden for irrigation, and so in their farm. And so that water stream is very, very much important. And this call into question a lot of other things. Of course, we have to have an impact assessment to see the ecological uh, the flora and fauna and the biodiversity in that area that would have been destroyed. I can tell you yesterday, there was a lot of birds and chirpings and so in that area before I leave around 5:30. And I can tell you this morning, when I return in that area, you can't hear a single chirp, you can't hear a single bird. So it means that everything, all the animal species that was dwelling in that area, all of them would have been migrated or killed in that area. So the impact assessment will tell us exactly the extent of this damage when everything is said and done within this fire that we currently suffering from
You,
here
you, you,
in
you said
Linden.
just now that you were involving the EPA has been involved in this matter to give an assessment as well, Environmental Protection Agency, other bodies that deal with environmental matters, forestry, you said as well, supposed to
Yeah,
give you an environmental impact report as to what's happening. You also said downstream there is a creek at the bottom there,
yeah. There's a creek in the Inferno. There's a creek. So the
and
water currently is pretty much hot, like boiling, that coming out from there. The resident that he have his farm down there, when he go and wash his hand in the water, and when he wash his hand, the water was so hot, he spring up immediately. He didn't even realize that the water is that hot. And so they have person who utilizing that same water because that is fresh water coming out. As I mentioned before, that entire area is a watershed, and that is the stream. Water is being all the different stream is being connected, going to that little creek, and then flow into another tributary, and then into the Karakara Creek, which then flow into the Demoir River. So that stream there is very important for a person that is utilizing the water downstream also.
well, let me
So
just
sometimes,
well let us
yeah, I
just
mean,
hope let us just hope, Mr. Vice Chair, that there's nothing more to that downstream there, because
contamination.
yes, because we don't want something more than just heat, or hot water at the bottom there, because we really need that environmental impact report, because that and testing, because we don't know what else is happening at the bottom there. You may say that the
Exactly,
water is hot, but it could be other geographical issues. You know what I mean? That could
exactly,
that could that could happen behind there. We don't know. We don't know. We need to know.
exactly.
And um I I don't know if it is. I think, based on I'm seeing online and in the chat room, in the comment section, that person should be evacuated immediately from that area, around the area where the smoke is, around the area where the this whole thing is happening, until we get full control of that smoke and an impact assessment report of that area, because we need to be very careful of what are happening there. We have MP Sears on the other side of the is now on the line. MP, I know that you were in the background all the time listening to this. What have you been getting from your parliamentary colleague on this issue? Um, because I think there are committees that address these matters as well. What are you hearing on the ground from your parliamentary committee, your parliamentary colleagues, as to addressing this particular area and issue?
Good afternoon, Weeks, and to our viewers. Vice Chairman Mark Goring, good afternoon to you. Well, from my end, with regards to the opposition member of parliament, their heart goes out to the Lindeners that are affected by all of these tragedies that are happening. It's an eventful week for Linden and Region 10. There's so much happening. We had the two young men that were murdered by the police, that were killed by the police. Now we have this tragic incident of the fire that is happening, and these accidents that are happening along our roadways. Our MPs, that's the opposition APNU AFC, stands with the residents of Region 10 and more so Linden. Of course, we have seen several MPs traveling to Linden to lend whatever support that they can give. The likes of Sherrod Duncan, Amanza Walton, Desir, Vince Roy Jordan, Charwayne Holder. If I missed the names, please forgive me. Of course, Jordan Figueroa, who's there, myself, and some other MPs and representatives from the various parties that we align ourselves with. What I can say is that from the parliamentary end, we are composing various questions that we're going to ask the relevant ministers at our next sitting, and that has to do with the handling of the death of the two young men and also the fire situation that we have and we're facing currently. And what is hoped after then that legislative or corrective legislative measures will take place. And that is what we're going to be doing from our end. We have been engaging various authorities to lend support, like Mark would have said, and of course the regional Democratic Council and the councillors who are on the ground there. Kudos to them, especially Mark, and of course our deputy mayor and the other regional representatives who are playing their part at this point in time. So that is what we've been doing from our end, from the parliamentary level, Andrew.
All right, MP, have you have gotten any call from the president, from the prime minister, from any of the executive members of the government on this issue of the fire? Have you gotten any call from them? Any information? Maybe Mark could jump in as well on what help or what other help they are ensuring that will happen for Linden. Have you gotten any word from the president himself, from the prime minister? Anybody?
Relating to me personally, as relates to the fire, no. But what I do know is that we have such a proactive representation in our community. We don't wait for people to call. We just call. We just go to the wherever, if we got to reach out to the CDC, to the prime minister, whoever it is, we do that. And I'm positively sure that Mark can confirm that they did reach, not them as in the government or so forth reaching out to the RDC. The RDC would have already made effort in terms of reaching out to these various agencies and ministries for additional support. Mark?
Yeah, I can confirm that the chairman is in talks with the prime minister and other stakeholder. There is constant update from the CDC. The CDC was on the ground. I'm not too sure if their personnel is still on the ground, but the CDC dispatched a team, and we have that, as I mentioned, that disaster preparedness committee in which it have a number of stakeholders, police and everyone involved, RU, and so
But no
on
call
the
from the president. No call from the president.
personally, from my end, no call from the president or any government official would have reached out to me. Of course, excuse me, it is very, very much important for us to keep updating our members, our resident on what is going on. We saw the tension, we saw what happened over the past couple of days in Linden. There, of course, I must mention to person who is just tuning in to view or listen what is going on in Linden. These two incidents is totally unrelated. The fire is unrelated. This is an industrial fire from dumping of waste. And the other activity where two young men would have lost their life. Well, one first, and then that would have erupted into protest action in which they had a standoff with the police, and that
Bring a
would
little bit
have
closer.
resulted in the death of another young man. And so we have two deaths now resulting coming out from Linden from police killing over the past couple of days. And so information is very important, and I want to appeal to the government in particular to make sure that in terms of this investigation, make sure that constant report is being going out or being or send out constant report on the situation on the ground, on the state of the investigation, so that residents could feel a sense that justice will be served. We know that the president committed to an impartial investigation, but we also, as regional leaders, we are calling for a thorough and impartial and independent investigation into this matter, because tension has been rising, but we're calming person down, ask person to be safe. We know justice require patience, and we want you guys to exercise that patience. But at the same time, I'm calling on the relevant authority to make sure that they supply constant update on what is taking place with the investigation, right? Because you gotta understand it. For you to understand the situation on the ground, you have to look at it from a layman term, look at it from the man on the street, and how he view this thing. For me, I will understand that. For the MP, he would understand it. If I relating to you, you would understand that. But for the average man on the road, there's a mistrust among them and law enforcement. And so the government got to make sure that that mistrust don't deteriorate further, and to make sure that information is constantly being flow and there is no disinformation, and make sure that the information that is being put out there is correct. Because person from the get-go, right, this whole thing with a fuel from the police press release and the video footage, the CCTV footage that was being released after, the two contradict, or the video footage contradict what the police put out. And that enraged person. So it's important, it's very, very important to put out accurate information so that person can relate to, and they're seeing something is happening. From what I observed and listening to the young person on the road, right? They're seeing, or they're saying, if they commit an act, right away they see their hands in handcuff and parade before the camera, or before the court. And I know this thing take time in these investigative process. There is standard operational procedure that normally be followed, that have to be involved, whereby immediate disarmament of the and confinement of the law enforcement officer, ballistic testing, statement from witnesses, and all these different things. If there's body footage, body cam footage, if there's footage from the area, and all these evidence have to be collected and then compiled in a file and dispatched to the director of public prosecution for a decision to be made before all this happens. So I just want to let persons know that this take a process, but at the same time, I'm calling on the relevant authority to also, give an update on the different stage where these investigations are going, so that person can be satisfied that this will be a fair process, unbiased process, that they can feel comfortable with, right? Family is hurting, friends are hurting, and we want to make sure that they are comfortable enough with the process and there is no skullduggery taking place. So we just want to make sure that that happens, and I'm going to continue to call on the resident to remain calm. Do not destroy your infrastructure. These infrastructure is your infrastructure, and you have to maintain it, right? You have to make sure and protect it. Also, I must say that there's elements, please look out for elements. There is elements that is being observed within the protest that is not from Linden. Person will come in and infiltrate that protest action, and I'm pretty sure that some of those actions are taken. They're being led by person from outside of Linden. I personally saw somebody who, was pretty much uneasy when they saw me on the day, because I was wearing a hat and a dark shades. And the person, there was a group of guys, and they, it was not from Linden, and wanted to know if I was a police officer, right? Until the guys, tell him, no, that's the regional vice chairman, because, he was very uneasy with my presence on the road just before everything happened. And so that is indication that person actually travel, and he actually traveled to Linden that morning and come to Linden. So there's actually person actually coming into Linden and may probably mislead other youths into doing things that they're not supposed to do in. And so I want to call on our residents to be very vigilant with person coming in and may want to cause mayhem within your community and may cause you or even influence you to do things that is not supposed to be done or do things outside of character, right? We don't want people to portray Linden as hooligans and thugs, right? We are an abiding citizen, and there's things that happen that fuel certain action. And we want to ask also the law enforcement officers to exercise some amount of constraint, when dealing with the public, and likewise we ask the public to be patient and to be calm, and don't you know destroy your own infrastructure. At the end of the day, when the dust is settled, this infrastructure is yours that you have to use to either cross the bridge or
Mhm.
whatever. At the end of the day, the infrastructure is yours, and you can't hurt yourself in the pursuit of justice. Right? You have to be cognizant of that fact. We will pursue justice. We will be there. I can tell you I'm on the ground from day one, from the get go, from the time Peters was being shot. I was being contacted that this is what went down. We went to the hospital and all these different things, and a number of things occur that I wouldn't say on air that should not have occurred. But nevertheless, we were there on the ground and capturing everything that happened, video footage, and capturing the moment, make sure that the story that occur in Linden, nobody don't tell the story for us. We must able to tell the story based on what we witness, based on what we observe, and based on what we capture on video. And video, now that everyone have a smartphone, we can actually see most of what take place and how it take place and what happened and all these different things. Right. So we're there to make sure that we provide that leadership. I can tell you on the night of the shooting of Kian Forte, myself and Nigel Hughes, leader of the Alliance for Change, I would have contacted him and asked him from in the night to communicate with him and ask him to come to the region and provide, legal services for the family, legal advice and so on. And one of the things, as of this day, there is only one single eyewitness that come forward so far and provided evidence in eyewitness evidence in the killing of Mr. Kian for the day. And that is key. Nigel would have said if we have to wait here and we wait there for 3 hours before the investigators get there in the midst of all the chaos to make sure that they record in the presence of Nigel that piece of eyewitness evidence that was produced. Of course, there's other lawyer that is being engaged that will be there to collect other eyewitness statements for this process, because when it's all said and done, when all the hype, as I would say to the youth, don't bother with all this hype and all this emotion and outbursts. At the end of the day, if you don't come forward and give evidence of what take place, of what transpire, no justice can be served. We need to capture every piece of evidence that is needed in this investigation to make sure that justice is served. All the video footage that surfaced would have shown clearly that the police did not follow the SOPs, and that resulted in the death of a young man, in which resulted in protest action and all these different destruction of properties and all these different things. And so I want to make sure that person come forward and provide the evidence that they saw, provide the eyewitness evidence. If there's video footages, provide them so that all that can be compiled whenever there's a commission of inquiry that would be established or whatever um, direction we go in for justice, in the pursuit of justice. The evidence must be there. The evidence must be protected at all costs so that when called upon, that evidence can be provided so that justice can be served in the case of Ronaldo Peters and Kian for today. We want to make sure that the family is satisfied with the justice system. The president would have given his commitment, and we're going to hold him to his word. The people of Linden look forward to seeing justice served. And I can say we're in a country that fear always gripple us, and that particular video footage that you show there, that is myself and Nigel there. I'm right behind you when you take that video, in which we go there to make a report. And the officers were so fearful, they disappear. They had about 3 or 4 officers there. When Nigel came in and he said, "This is what you want to do to record," the officers disappeared. They say empty station. Everyone is fearful, right? So we want to make sure that that fear and that mistrust is removed and a free and fair process is there where evidence can be collected and processed and make sure that, justice is served. Linden, the residents, the families look forward for justice. And so we want those justice to be served. Andrew.
MPC, MPCers, I mean, you got some update to give us. You were at the morgue this morning. What happened there this morning?
All right. So just to add but to what Mark spoke about there, I want us to understand that um, what is being pushed out there by supporters of the government is that our leaders, the regional leaders, are not representing or standing up with the people. That is not true. From the get go, our leaders, specifically Mark Goring and Dominic Blair, there's the deputy mayor and the vice chairman, stood with the people. Mark said it. They were at the hospital. When we got the news, they were there. They went immediately just after the body was taken to the morgue. They went to the police station. They stood there with the family. Yes, there was a lot of folks out there who were upset about the situation and how things were handled. And rightfully, what broke that trust between the people and the police is the statement, the press release, which misrepresented the entire situation. Our two leaders, Mark Goring and Dominic Blair, worked as intercessors between the police and the residents that were out there on the night in question. Let's not be fooled that all of our leaders stood with the residents of Linden throughout this entire ordeal, to the point whereby we recognized that we needed to have legal advice for the family, and also we needed eyewitnesses to basically submit their statements.
Hmm.
What the PPP is trying to do right now is to say that our leaders led the residents, the protesters, into a bloodbath. No, that was not the case. Our leaders within Linden will continue to stand not only with the family and the relatives and residents of region of Linden. We are there 100%. We're going to see this entire process through and ensure that justice is served. This morning, I had the opportunity of being at the morgue where the autopsy for both young men that were shot was done. What was surprising to me is that the relatives were not allowed to witness the autopsy. However,
What?
what was preliminarily confirmed that both that was Dan was shot once through the eye and of course his head, and the other young man, that's Mr. Peters, he was shot once. That I think that's to his right side,
Mm-hmm.
right? So both of them um, were basically killed because of a single gunshot wounds in separate incidents. Now, what happens from here on now, the reports that the officers have taken will then be submitted and formulate one report and then submit to the DPP. That's where we're at right now. Speaking with one of the cousins, he said that the family is still grieving. Both families are still grieving, but they ask for peace and stability while the investigation is being carried on. They thank all the leaders and the residents who supported them in this time of grief. And like we've been saying all along, all of this could have been avoided if the SOPs have been followed. Andrew?
Even, even what is happening now with the those that pull the trigger. The police in question, the both policemen, we just heard that they are on home house arrest, and then there's a report that says that the first shooter was seen at his was seen in his village when he was on house arrest. What's going on? What information have you gotten pertaining to where the government is taking this matter pertaining to the investigation? Have you gotten any word from the DPP? Has there been an investigation called upon to bring these two persons, these two police officers, to court, to justice? What you're hearing on the ground?
Well, let me start with what was committed to. When the president was in Linden, he said that the RSS, that's the same RSS that did the whole investigation with the Henry boys and the other cases within our country. And being real with you, when we asked as an opposition for an independent investigation, we are going with the consensus of the people and based on what would have happened in the past. It seems to us that the RSS is not that particularly credible.
Hmm.
But as it is right now, what we are depending on, and no, we have not gotten any word from the DPP because nothing has been submitted as yet. What we expected, and um, from the night Ronaldo got shot, or the afternoon that Ronaldo got shot, we expected to see police on the scene almost immediately. That did not happen. It had to take the residents now to go to the police station and then store up things, and maybe then they did an interview after and take statements and so forth. When Dan got shot, the police obviously could not. It was a hostile environment. Maybe that's why they did not go to the scene. But residents would have taken account of what happened there and then. Andrew, and to our viewers right now, it is unclear at what stage of the investigation is at right now. But what I can assure our viewing audience is that we, as leaders within Linden, will follow this entire process to the end. We, like Mark said, we're engaging with our lawyers, specifically Nigel Hughes, and also Amanza Walton Desir, and some others on the way forward with this. But we're expecting answers very, very soon. We don't want to wait 2, 3 months after. As in the case with what happened in 2012, only recently there was a ruling in terms of a settlement for those who were affected. And this happened years upon years ago, since 2012. We're not going to wait months upon months to get answers. We want answers now. And like I said, we're going to hold the government into account because, of course, these officers are employees of the state.
You want to jump right in there, Mr. Vice Chair?
Yeah, I want to thank Deavin for making that very clear, and he didn't mention myself and Dr. Mayor being intercessor on the night of the incident. Of course, at that point, temperature raging, and so person asking for answers, and we had to intercede. In fact, the commander had to take us with a family member in the police station and go to every cell to make sure that because person had wanted the commander to, bring out the thing. So we had to make sure that we go in there and to view all the cells to make sure that nobody's in there. The shooter, the officer in the incident is not there. Of course, the resident wasn't buying it. They would already transform him, and so transfer him to a different location. I believe he would have already transferred to Georgetown. And so there was a number of questions resident was asking, and they was asking those questions to us. They wanted to know a number of things. One, at the time of confinement of the officer, um, they do a breathalyzer test on him first to clear him of any intoxication. Two, they wanted to know if he was on official duty, saying they did not see him with any uniform. They wanted to know if the weapon that he used was a service weapon and if it was being entered, if there was an entry in the station diary that is booked out for official duty. They wanted to know how much rounds that was booked out and how much booked in back. And all these different questions, they was asking. And so I had to ask these questions to make sure, that these evidence collect. If the police would have identified witnesses to this incident and would have taken those eyewitness testimony, and if they would have went back to the crime scene and processed the crime scene for empty shell, warhead, and all those different things. So there's a number of questions that residents had, and they believe that the voice was not being heard. And so they could have asked those questions to me, in which the commander would most likely provide the answers. Of course, the commander, we had a talk with the crowd. We managed to get the crowd quiet, and the commander came and with his deputies and other officers and gave an update. Of course, he couldn't divulge certain information into the investigation, but assure person that be calm. And later on in the night, we would have speak to the crowd, advise them to stay calm and let the process follow and disperse, and everyone leave there. I believe the deputy would have called me. I said, and I informed him that everybody went away. I went home, and so that quiet down there. Everything what happened after, we have no knowledge about it. Whoever start up, of course, some of the people I don't know where they went, but the next day everything else start, and the rest is history. All that we know that history record is that two young men was being killed by the police in Linden, and justice has to be served. Right, these family have to have closure upon the killing of these two young men, and we want to see. I'm calling again on this live to the authorities to give an update on the investigation as soon as, so that person can feel some sort of sense of relief that the investigation is moving ahead. We want to see that as early as possible, and to make sure that sporadic update is being given for this. We see this in developed countries where commanders and so on will come and they do live program, and they give an update, live press conference on where the investigation going and what is being collected so far. And not because we're a third world country, we cannot be treated as such. We believe that at every step of the way, an update should be given so that person you can calm, the tension that is currently being built up in Linden, because this is two young men that was killed. They was unarmed, and we want to make sure that this doesn't occur again. It occurred in the past. Now it occurred over the weekend, and now we want to make sure that justice is served and this does not happen again. Right? We know the president would have called for another president. I believe the commissioner of police would have indicated that policemen are now required to wear body cam, and so we want to see a police force that is being reformed. We want to see the use of body camera. We want to see better training in the de-escalation and the use of force, because basically what happened Monday was an agitation, right? Although person was there, police need to be properly trained in how to deal with crowd dispersal. There's no part in the world you just see protests. We see violent protests, and police don't fire in a live shot into a crowd. That is completely no. And me being having a military background, being trained also in crowd dispersal, regardless of how long, over 20 years ago, I still could remember those training. At no time you just be having live wrong in a crowd dispersal. None.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that take fully into account that the police force clearly need reform and better training in crowd de-escalation and de-escalation in the use of force. Right? This excessive use of force, it should not have taken place. That is for the border. That is to deal with our aggressive
That's right.
neighbor,
Yeah.
not to deal with our resident, not to categorize all our residents as hooligans and thugs. No, people have passion, they have feelings, all of us have feelings, and when things come, when things happen, those feelings sometimes go on outbursts, right? But if that is not to say that person is thugs and person is hooligans and all these things. We see protests in all parts of this country, all parts, but we have never seen outside of the Afro-Guyanese community lethal force being used. And that is in itself caused some of these problems that we see over the past, and it should not happen again. It shouldn't happen again. It should have never happened. Never.
Right. That's
Deavin,
exactly. Yeah. Just
Deavin,
want.
you have the last word. We have like about 90 seconds before we can go, but you
Okay.
have the last word. Go ahead.
All right, so I just want to share with our viewing audience here that while there is a call for justice, some persons will be asking, what is the justice that their family and even the community is looking for? One has to do with the those in question who are brought to justice. One found guilty is charged, Also, some of the residents are asking for demotions and transfers and expulsion from the force. Also, there's the talk of reviewing the standard operating procedures and also enforcing that and retraining and retooling effectively the law enforcement agents. And finally, the question of fines and compensation. Now, let's make this clear that no amount of money could ever bring back a life, because you have two families and, children who are grieving right now. So, whatever compensation that might come, it could never bring back the lives of those that were snuffed out. But compensation gives some sort of comfort to the family, and also deters any further action in terms of this ever reoccurring again. As Mark said, it should never happen. Over the next couple of days, the family and relatives and friends will be mourning. We are expected to have a candlelight vigil, and both Dan and Naldo, they will be buried on the same day, and this is going to be in the latter part of next week. At this point in time, again, we continue to encourage our residents to be a little bit patient. However, this patient only have such a limit, and we're expecting to hear answers from the government and the relevant authorities as soon as possible. God bless Linden, and also God bless Guyana. Andrew?
MP Sears, thank you so much.
Let me
MP,
interrupt you quickly, Andrew.
yes,
Just coming in, I just received
you have
this
another
report.
update?
And so we're going to go. This is a truck just torn over there at 5 Mile Mabura Road. One person dead, one person pinned down. And so we're going to head out there immediately to see what assistance we can provide on
That's
the
on the road.
Mabura Road
That's on
area
the
there.
road. That's on the main
That's it.
road and the highway.
No, that is the new road that's
Mabura.
been constructed, the Mabura Road at 5 Mile area there.
Oh man.
So the report just coming of one person died. Let me just give you the information clearly that come in.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, one person died and one person currently being pinned down at 5 Mile. So we're gonna go there quickly and see how we can render any assistance there also. So a lot is happening. Of course, we're gonna bring those live updates as they come in. Just keep Region 10 in your prayer, keep Linden in your prayer. The devil is busy, but we as leaders are gonna continue to provide those leadership as we move forward.
So much, both of you, MP, and the chairman, vice chairman of the
Thank you.
RDC of Region 10, Mr. Mark Goring. Thank you both for being on the program this afternoon and giving us all the update. We're still going to be looking out for those updates as they come in, as you just said. Feed the public as to what's happening. Have a great rest of your day, guys. And Mark going and Deavin, we're going to be on the ground there in Linden as he continue to give us more updates and the necessary news. Thank you. Thank you. All right, that's it. That's it for us this afternoon. Giving you this update at this hour. We feel that we must bring this to you because we're getting all sorts of information coming out there, all sorts of miscommunication and discommunication happening. But I want to encourage you to keep your ears on the ground for information coming from trusted sources. Sure, Duncan, Gordon Mosley. You would see also Capital News will be giving you. Those are trusted news entities that will give you trusted broadcasts as well. You'll get information from probably my good friend Mr. Adams. They're giving you those updates as well. Those are trusted sources that can give you broadcasts that are credible, that we consider to be credible. And so stay tuned during the course of the week, at the weekend, as we bring you these updates. That's the broadcast from my end, and stay safe out there. We have these updates coming in. We're going to give it to you as we get them. Okay? Have a great afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for staying tuned.